Okay, welcome to our December 17th school board meeting, our last meeting for the year. And we want to start with roll call. Member Oswald, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. Member Eder.
Here.
Member Kirby.
Here.
Member Loeffler-Kemp.
Here.
Member Lofeld.
Here.
I am here. Member Sandstead.
Here.
Member Trinka.
Here.
Superintendent Gronseth.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Horton. Here. Deputy Clerk Erickson.
Here.
Secretary Jackie Dolence. Student Rep Emma Natali and Vanessa Farrell. Everyone is present. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Member Oswald. And just before we go into our agenda, just want to again welcome everybody. I know we have some students here from some of the high schools for their social studies and government classes. I got in the elevator with one of them and got my picture taken. So thank you, students, for being here, and community members for being here as well. And just at the start of this meeting, also just want to do a thank you to our staff for all the work they have been doing this half of the year. Particularly thank our facilities staff for the incredible work they've been doing with snow removal and keeping our sidewalks clean. And also just want to wish all of our district-wide staff and our community a happy holiday season in whatever ways you celebrate it. So we can move on now to approving of the agenda. Do I have a motion? How come the pledge? Yes, the pledge is not on the agenda. So we will start with the pledge and then approving of the agenda. So if everyone could please stand. Thank you.
Do we have to amend it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you for that catch. Okay, so now approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as it is? Moved by Member Trinka. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Eder. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 7-0. Okay, the next item is approving our regular school board minutes for November 19th. Could I entertain a motion to approve the minutes, please? Moved by Member Kirby. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Lofold. Is there any discussion of the November 19th minutes? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 7-0. The next meeting was our special closed meeting on concerning property on December 9th. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Member Lofold. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Kirby. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Okay, the next item is going to be school and community recognition, but before we move down, we want to do our own just quick recognition. Okay, so at that last meeting of the year, we do always like to recognize board members that will be leaving the board before our next meeting in January. And so tonight, we'd like to recognize Member Sandstead for her 4 years of service on the board, starting 2016 to 2019. So Member Sandstead, here you go. And as a token of our appreciation, we have a traditional gift we give board members, and it's a bowl. You can use it for M&M's, you can use it for cereal, I don't know. But we want to thank you for your service. And then just as your board chair, I also wanted to give you a little gift that I know one of the things you've been saying that you want to do more of is spend time with your kids, and so one of our favorite authors is Chris Monroe, and particularly her book called Monkey with a Tool Belt and the Silly School Mystery. So enjoy reading that to your kids. And also there's, I know you and I share a passion for baking, so I got you a little Epicur whisk to do more baking with in all the free time you'll have. So again, thank you.
Much, Rosie.
Okay, so now we can move on down to the school and community recognition. Yeah, and board members, if you need anything with you, we'll just stay down for the truth and taxation presentation. So if you were planning on bringing anything to write on, you might want to grab that.
Members of the board, this month I'm pleased to introduce Jamie De La Cruz for recognition. Ms. De La Cruz is a member of the Oneida Nation in Wisconsin. She is an American Indian Homeschool Liaison for our American Indian Education Program. Homeschool liaisons work to enhance communication between schools and families. They help families navigate school processes and help school personnel better understand cultural and linguistic differences that may affect students. For her work, the Minnesota Indian Education Association presented Ms. De La Cruz with the 2019 K-12 Counselor Liaison of the Year Award. This prestigious award was presented during MIEA's 35th Annual Conference in November. The award recognizes leadership, work in the American Indian education community, reflection of American Indian culture in life work, and other achievements. Ms. De La Cruz, you are truly making a difference in the lives of students. Congratulations on receiving this award, and thank you for all you do to support education in Duluth. Did you want to sit?
No, that's okay. Okay, all right, cool.
Now you have to stay around for the board meetings. No.
A lot of pictures. This will just be a couple of things. She makes so much.
This chair over here. Good. Welcome to the Truth and Taxation portion of the school board meeting tonight, which is a requirement through state statute for every municipality to provide information about their upcoming payable tax levy and their current year budget. So we will be talking tonight about the upcoming taxes payable for calendar year 2020, and then also an update on our fiscal year 20 budget. So the timeline process that we go through to determine the levy limitation and certification that the school board will be approving tonight as part of our agenda is that in July and August, the district will review and submit data to the Department of Education. Much of this information we work on through the summer and then through September. We see a first run of the proposed levy in the beginning of September, which is published by the department. Then the district continues to work on making sure that the data is accurate. We may edit all the way through September 30th. When we do the school board meeting in September, the school board approved a maximum levy, which allows the district all the way through September 30th to continue to edit and change. Oftentimes, the edits and changes are coming from the Department of Education and not necessarily us, because they're editing and changing information as they go through as well. From there, the proposed property tax statements come out in November. So before the 24th of November, the proposed property tax statements, which will show an estimated amount of what every entity, every taxing entity's portion would look like on the proposed property tax statements. And then tonight we have our public hearing, and then the board will approve our final certified levy, and then that gets submitted to the county auditor, who will then spread those taxes on all of our different properties throughout the district. The first thing we're going to look at is our levy comparison from last year's levy to this year's levy. And as you can see, if you look to the farthest to your right, where it says total levy, we actually have a levy change of less than 1%. So we have a very stable levy. And because of the projected amount of levy or property value increase in our district, it is most likely that a property that has a same or similar valuation coming in 2020 as compared to 2019 may actually see a slight decrease in their school portion of their taxes, because our levy is so stable. Again, there's a lot of factors that affect your proposed property tax statement, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to visit me after the school board meeting. I can help answer any questions. But again, considering if you have a similar or same valuation last year compared to this year, you should see a very similar or slightly lower portion of the portion of your levy. What will change, though, on the proposed property tax statements under the school district, you will see voter and other. And you can see under the first column, the general RMV voter is actually going down, and the general RMV other is going up. These are countering each other with almost the identical amount, and this is because of a statute change in the amount of what we call local optional revenue. School districts right now, in current year, fiscal year 20, districts would have a $424 per pupil authority for what is called local optional. In the last legislative session, they changed that to $724, so they added $300. That authority was switched from what was board-approved $300 referendum, so districts who had a $300 board-approved referendum, that rolled into what was the local optional. So there was no new money or new authority available, that switched over. But for districts who did not have any board-approved authority, they moved $300 of voter authority over to the local optional. So in our case, what we have on the Pay 19 levy, which was last year when the referendum was approved, we had approximately $946 a pupil on last year's levy, which is the blue bar. And this year, it will be $300 per pupil less. And then in the green bar on the second column, that's where the $300 comes. So it is net revenue neutral to the district. It's just switching categories. So if you were to look at your proposed properties tax statement from last year and this year, the amounts will be adjusted from voter to other. This is not anything the district had any control over. This was a statute change, and again was revenue neutral. It's also under the same tax spread category of referendum market value, and so there was no change in the classification of property that you have. So if you have a business or if you have a residential homestead, you would be paying the same amount. It didn't switch from a taxable category. Community service stayed very stable, and our general NTC other, this is where many components of our levy fall in between. We are seeing a slight decrease, and most of that was due to adjustments from our long-term facilities maintenance. And this is very common for a district our size with the large amount of long-term facilities projects that we have. It's oftentimes just a timing issue from when a project gets approved and when we have authority and when we spend the dollars. So we oftentimes see adjustments, and then on our next levy we'll see a correction. So this is very common, and again, it was relatively neutral for us in that category. Debt service looks like it's slightly increasing, and that mostly had to do with the fact that last year we had a large, what we call a debt excess adjustment. We are required as a district to only carry 5% of our principal and interest in our debt service fund balance, and when that grows too high, the state does a calculation and they lower our levy to make sure we spend down that fund balance. So last year we had, in this category, an adjustment of over $900,000, and this year it is down closer to just less than $200,000. So that adjustment is actually a net increase on our levy, but because we refunded bonds, our net principal and interest payments actually went down. So those two are counteracting each other on the levy. So you don't see that in the total, but we actually have two swings in the debt service. One, our principal and interest payments went down because we were able to save money with a refunding that we did last spring. And then we had that change from not having that debt excess adjustment, which means we don't have to spend down a fund balance. Our fund balance is much more in line with what that limit is. So again, just a summary of our changes. We have a conversion of the $300 from the RMV voter to RMV other. We had some adjustments from our RMV voter. If you remember last year, we talked about that with the new referendum, we had a $907,000 negative adjustment that was from a prior year that was being corrected on last year's levy. This year we have one final adjustment, which is approximately $463,000 as a negative adjustment. So it's not as big of an adjustment as last year, but this will be that final step in that multi-year correction from actually data from back in 2017. So these were levy corrections that oftentimes happen, and then we're seeing that now coming on here. And again, we talked about the long-term facilities maintenance, project approval timing issues, and then we just had an overall change in our general fund of approximately $152,000 increase. And then again, with our debt service, just because of a refunding and timing and our debt excess reduction, we saw approximately $94,000 increase. We're now transitioning from talking about our levy process to talking about our budget, but where we can see them come together is that the levy is a component of our revenue budget. Oftentimes people might think that the levy comprises all of what a school district uses to operate, but in our case we can see that, and again, just as a note, this isn't a typo, this is actually last year's levy because we use last year's levy for this year's budget. The levy that you're approving tonight is actually for fiscal year 21 coming up next year. So when we're doing this comparison, we're looking at the payable 19 levy, which was approved last year at just shy or just over $39.8 million. And our total revenue budget was over $140 million. So approximately 27% of our budget is used for our levy. And if you think back a couple slides ago, approximately $20 million of the $39 million is debt service. So if you think about the operational part of our budget and what the levy does for us, it's really only about half of that amount that goes into the daily operations. Half of our levy is paying for that debt service obligation. So again, when we think about the levy and we think about our revenue budget, it just comprises of less than 30% of our revenues. This is a general overview of our current estimated expense and revenue budget for fiscal year 20, the year that we're in right now. And you can see that we estimated approximately $147 million in revenue in all of our funds. and approximately $145.8 million in expenditures, which is leaving us about $1.2 million of what you might think of as surplus. But keep in mind that you can see in line 1, the general fund is showing a projected surplus of approximately $500,000, which was what, as a board, we voted together to try to grow our fund balance. So that surplus is what we had hoped would be part of our fund balance at the end of the year. And then you can also see that the debt redemption fund looks like it has a surplus of approximately $968,000. Again, this is a timing process because of the refunding and when payments come in versus when we pay them out. We received revenue in fiscal year 19 and we'll have expenditures in fiscal year 20 because of the refunding. So again, think of that as more of a holding account than it is of extra revenue for the district. Those funds will get paid out in fiscal year 20. We do have another planned fund balance spend down of community service. This is very common where when we have fund balances or projects that are coming through community service, and then sometimes there's carryovers where there's a fund balance that's being chosen to spend down versus current revenues and current expenditures. So this was planned and part of the budget process. Taking a look at our revenues, where our revenues come from, our local sources, which does include our levy, is approximately 32.5% of all of our funds of that $147 million. Our state sources, over $88 million comes from different state sources, and the largest component of that would be our general education aid that we get, again, based on pupil counts. And then we have our federal sources, which is about $10.5 million. Federal sources come in our general fund, our food service fund, and our community service fund. So we do see revenues in multiple funds. And again, you can see that 60% or the majority of our revenue comes from the state. And then thinking about those local sources, thinking that a large component of that is also our debt service. Switching over to looking at our expense side of our budget for fiscal year 20 that we're in right now, we're looking at our expenses by program area. And again, I'm focusing here just on the general fund, so this does not include food service, community service, or our debt service, so just focusing on our general operational fund. We have approximately just shy of $112 million budgeted. And as you can see in the bar graph, the largest area of where we spend our dollars is in our elementary and secondary regular education. And of that, those are going to be our teaching staff, their wages and benefits. Coming in as our second highest categorical expenditure through a program description would be our special education. And you can see that that is over $24 million that we spend on our special education services. Sites and buildings comes in, keeping in mind that this would be both our general operations and then also our long-term facilities maintenance projects. Those projects can vary from year to year, depending on the timing of our levy and the timing of our projects. So that may sway from one year to the next. This is slightly lower than it was last year because we did some larger scale projects in 2019 than what are planned in 2020. And then we have things, our pupil support services in the general fund. This is going to include counseling and nursing services and others. Our instructional support services, this is going to include curriculum, this is going to include staff development and others. We do have vocational education, and again, we have our district support services and our administration services. Taking that same expense budget and just looking at it from a different perspective, this is what we would call our object area. How do we spend those dollars within each of those program areas that we saw on that last chart? Again, you can see that 57% of our general fund budget pays for wages and salaries and wages. And then followed right behind that would be our employee benefits at 24%. So between those two main categories, 81% of our budget is people. So if you think of that in that terms. And then if you look at the green piece of pie, which is our purchase services, part of that is also people. Those would be our contracted folks that we pay for through third-party vendors or other contracted people who aren't our employees. There are some non-labor portions in the purchase services, but a larger component of that is also people. So when we think about what a district invests in, it's going to be people. And again, our supplies and materials, this is for the general fund, comprises around 4%. Our capital expenditures, which is going to be our long-term facilities maintenance and our technology area, is approximately 5%. And then we just have a minor component of other expenditures. And with that, that is what we're sharing. Part of the obligation of Truth and Taxation is to allow the public to speak or ask any questions. So we would open it up if there's anyone who has any questions specific to Truth and Taxation. There'll also be the comment period during the regular school board meeting for those folks that have signed up. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has no questions. This was really exciting. Are you sure there wasn't anyone? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, we'll begin our public comment period, and again, a huge thank you to Ms. Erickson for the Truth and Taxation presentation. So before we begin with the audience presentation, we're going to have our student reps read our vision and community statement.
We will build on our shared beliefs and values of unity, high achievement, and responsible use of resources to create Duluth public schools and classrooms that are safe, supportive, and inclusive. We will work to inspire every student to achieve their potential and prepare students to lead productive, fulfilling lives as citizens of Duluth and the wider world.
11 Tools of Civility. This school board recognizes 11 tools of civility that will provide increased opportunities for civil discourse in order to find positive resolutions to the issues that face our community. These tools include 1. Pay attention. Listen. Be inclusive. Don't gossip. Show respect. Be agreeable. Apologize. Give constructive criticism. Take responsibility. Be honest and care for others. Show your evidence. Share your reasoning.
Thank you, students. And then Member Oswald, do you want to read the guidelines for the comment period?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Public comment information. Information to know when you sign up to talk to us. Persons wishing to address the school board must sign in prior to the meeting, listing their name, address, and the matter on which you will speak. It's located over there. If you have any handouts for the board, please give them to the school board secretaries located in the back of the room. Persons addressing the board will speak in the order in which they signed up, and each person addressing the board will have 3 minutes. Persons addressing the board may not merge their time in order to allow one person to speak for more than 3 minutes. The clerk of the board will start the stoplight timer at the start of each person's time A green light means go, yellow means start wrapping it up, and red means please stop. Persons addressing the board shall confine their comments to matters pertaining to the agenda or relevant matters of administrative concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Oswald. Okay, so our first speaker is Ethan Fisher.
Good evening. It's good to be here this evening with you. I've got a few things I want to comment on tonight. The first, I reached out to our district music curriculum specialist and asked if she would put together some comments about the elementary music program that's happening this week. And so this is her words that I'm going to share with you. On behalf of the music department, I would like to wish you happy holidays, however you may celebrate. For the past couple of months, music teachers and students at all of our schools have been studying and preparing for the busy holiday season. The music teachers have worked countless hours to plan and help students learn skills and music to present to their families, teachers, and the Duluth community. The extra time, sleepless nights, because the sound of jingle bells ringing in their ears, and the boundless energy to put on a show is an important part of music education. The performance of music for others helps students develop the 21st century skills of creativity, communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. Support from colleagues, site staff, and principals has been essential in the success of student learning and the performances. Special thanks goes out to school engineers and custodial staff who have helped us with performance spaces by cleaning, setting up, and taking down of equipment, and especially the snow removal. This has been a tough few weeks with the snow days we have missed, but look forward to sharing music with families, friends, and all who attend our concerts. Remember, the music calendar is shared with you and administration via Google for music events throughout the school year. We hope to see you soon. And again, that's on behalf of Terry Ackervick, our music curriculum specialist. Also wanted to just update the board. We just finished our second round of the labor management process with our QLT meetings. Assistant Superintendent Horton updated all of the teachers present about our boundary study. A lot of teachers that have participated in that are appreciative of being part of the process. He also updated us on the superintendent search. I'd like to mention that a lot of teachers have commented and asked questions of me with regards to the process that teachers are going to play in the process of selecting our next superintendent. We are an important stakeholder in this process, and I ask that you continue to include teachers in this process as we go. So thank you very much for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ethan. The next speaker is Nicole Jensen.
Good evening. I'm Nikki Jensen, and I work at Lincoln Park Middle School, and I am their Tier 1 PBIS coordinator as well as a 7th grade social studies teacher. I've come to talk to you tonight about all of the hard work that we've put into reframing our PBIS framework at Lincoln Park Middle School, and just kind of showcase a little bit of the hard work that's going on. I have a handout for everybody that I believe is being handed out. That way you have a frame of reference to what I'm talking about. Acronyms are not fun. And this way you'll have some visuals to go along with what I'm talking about. So for those of you who don't know, PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. It is a framework, and it focuses on systems, universal practices, and data-driven decision-making. It helps teach, practice, and encourage positive and expected student behaviors across all student settings or school settings. It's more about prevention than it is punishment, so we're trying to get away from the punitive side of things and go towards reinforcing positive behaviors. So the framework the triangle is what's most used in representing PBIS, where 80% of your student population is at the bottom, even though all 100% of your student population does get the universal lesson plans that go with PBIS. Your tier 2 are students that might just need a little bit extra in helping them with their positive behaviors, and then the top 2 to 3% are kids that need slightly more, if not a lot more. So the first part that we did was we rebranded. One of the tenets of PBIS is to have 3 to 5 universally positively stated expectations. The way we came up with those was last year we polled students to discover the areas of concern according to them, to create some buy-in. And from those, we came up with ROAR. ROAR fit really, really nicely because we are the Wildcats. Wildcats roar, easy to remember. We can make lots of really punny, fun things that they roll their eyes at, but really they're remembering. And so ROAR stands for responsible, open-minded, accepting, and restorative. We created signage for the entire school. So ROAR is everywhere in the hallway, classrooms, cafeterias, outside of bathrooms, anywhere you can think of that students are our ROAR signs, and all of them have what positive behavior or what positive actions we'd like to see in those areas. Lesson plans were developed. They were taught to all students for all areas of school, and we will be reteaching those lessons after the winter break to remember what we're doing. Token systems are a big part of PBIS, and so if you look on the second page, we've started using positive pause. These are handed out by teachers and all staff members if they see expected behaviors. We've done one where the entire school had to earn 1,500 positive pause, and they had a fun Wednesday afternoon that they all love to do, and we are on our 500, the first grade level to get to 500 will receive another activity. My time is up. But if you want to look through here and you have any other questions, you can feel free to email me if you have any questions. The students seem to really appreciate it, and teachers are all on board. So we're hoping that in a couple of years we have a huge culture shift at Lincoln Park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nikki, and we'll need to get you to come to the Education Committee maybe, for a longer presentation, but thank you for your great work. Okay, the next speaker is Betty Green.
Chair Lafleur-Kemp, Superintendent Gronseth, and members of the school board. My name is Betty Green. Thank you for adding all 15 original scenarios for the boundary study to the district's webpage. I appreciate your response to our request for greater transparency. As you consider what options to put forth to the community in January, I encourage you to give particular weight to concerns expressed by historically marginalized communities regarding both the location of immersion programs and better distribution of students between the high schools. This is an important time to properly use the tool for equity accountability because there's a great potential for unintended consequences and a great chance to advance equity of opportunities for all high school students. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. The next speaker is Kevin Square Brown.
Good evening, board members, superintendent. I'm speaking on my own behalf. My name is Kevin Square Brown. I begin with a thank you for the full release of the boundary study plans. My focus tonight is on the hiring process of building principals. The current process seems shrouded in secrecy, and secrecy is a breeding ground for bias. I recently received access to the results of the formal data request I made for documents related to the principal hiring at Lincoln Park Middle School. I did that after not receiving a reply from the superintendent requesting information on that process. The district estimated that it took 6 full hours to fully redact the 227 pages that became functionally useless paper I was invited to inspect. Secrecy costs us money as well as trust and goodwill. I will not likely challenge in court the nearly 100% redacted information as overly broad. My preference is to work with those in power to ensure that processes going forward are built to avoid the kinds of bias the current process is prone to foster. A superintendent in our district has the authority to hire whomever they want to lead our buildings, subject, of course, to minimum licensing requirements. Okay, that's what's legal and allowed. So is diverting comp ed. Let's talk instead about what derives from a commitment to equity and accountability. Because I have yet to been given a clear description of the hiring process, I will offer some thoughts on what an equitable and accountable process might include. Hiring committee composition. Currently, it seems to be a secret who sits on the hiring committee. It isn't even clear how one gets invited onto such a committee. I suggest accountability is served by having a school board member selected by the board, not the superintendent, on the hiring committee for a principal. In addition, one or more parents or community members from communities which are generally not given voice or consideration in such decisions should also be on the committee. Accountability in the hiring decision. When a committee's top-ranked candidate is not offered the position, and there are times that may be appropriate, the superintendent should note that and justify that decision to the school board. Is there currently any accountability that precludes a superintendent from acting out of perhaps unchecked, unconscious bias? Having a school board member on the committee in such cases could foster accountability. Good systems are built to provide that kind of safeguard. Representation of building administration. I would also offer that the administrative leadership team at the building, the principal, assistant principal, dean, be seen for the collection of power those positions represent. What they look like and the perspectives they bring, and more importantly, don't bring, matter. Social identity and our daily lived experience don't define our ability to bring in multiple perspectives, yet they shouldn't be ignored. What is the impact when, at a building like Lincoln Park Middle School, all of those positions are filled with folks who present as white men? How does that happen? And what does that say to students and families that don't see themselves and their lives reflected in the power at that building? I urge this board to create policy and demand practice that brings structural equity and accountability to the hiring of principals in our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. The next speaker is Lauren Martell.
Good evening. I'm going to read a brief passage from the book I've been writing, and I try to edit it to get as close to 3 minutes as I can. During his last year or so on the board, Gary Glass was losing his longtime soulmate, and one of the majority members was also battling cancer. Another member's wife also became a victim of cancer, but he kept showing up on time for meetings. Another member was severely challenged with MS, but he kept dragging himself into the boardroom. The member who replaced him on the board was also diagnosed with cancer, only a few months after being elected. Even in the face of their own frailty and mortality, all of these civic-minded citizens kept using their precious, finite lives to fight for what they believed, right or wrong. A convincing case can be made that they were all fools, but oh, what fervent fools. One night, as he was departing a meeting, the board member, suffering from MS, fell in the hallway of Old Central and couldn't get back to his feet. Some of his political opponents immediately set aside their differences, picked him up and carried him out of the building. After he was safely secured inside a vehicle, the physically impaired man's best friend, also on the board, profusely thanked the others for their show of camaraderie. All the men smiled and shook hands. The most revealing note about this incident is that empathy did not translate into political compromise. 1 month later, all parties climbed back into their opposition foxholes and continued fighting a civil war that had already been raging for the better part of a decade. The stark division in the boardroom mirrored the polarization in Washington and the Minnesota State House. Another illustration of this division occurred when one of the aforementioned members was struck with the curse of cancer. The board majority and administration all knew, but the minority didn't learn about it for months. When I questioned one of the minority members about this profound divide, she said, There is no trust at all in the room. Absolutely none. Not even over something like this. Everybody in City Hall knew she was ill, but we didn't. After a meeting one night in the hallway outside the boardroom, the board member who was bravely struggling with MS beckoned me closer and said, "It's too bad this whole thing has made us adversaries." And I agreed it was regrettable. We hadn't met under different circumstance. I would say the same thing about you, Member Sandstedt. You showed great character and did an excellent job over the past 4 years. This board is going to be diminished by the loss of your experience and keen analytical mind. Though I'm certain you will be relieved to have the burden off your shoulders. My best to you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. The next speaker is Audrey Devine-Eller.
Hello, thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Audrey Devine-Eller. The boundary work is so hard. It is so hard, and you all have a very difficult job ahead of you that is going to have a lot of heated political conversations all over the next year. So I would just want to recognize that this is a tough thing that you all have to do, and that there may be times when you need to make some brave stands about it. Boundary design is always political. It's always about people's politics, and it is always about money. It's always about where people bought houses so that their kids could go to the schools that they thought they would. And so you're going to have some tough conversations and some tough decisions over the next few years. I want to briefly tonight just make public the email that I sent to you all earlier today. On behalf of a few members of the NAACP Education Equity Committee, it's me, Kevin Square Brown, Betty Green, Bettina Keppers, and Judy Sawson are the signatories on this. So I hope that you will have a chance to read that email in depth if you haven't already. I just want to do some highlights on the record. First, we think that this is a really important time to really use the tool for equity accountability and to prioritize the perspectives of historically marginalized groups. None of us have had time to do that properly at this point, but I think it's really important. Two is concerns about the assumptions behind the data. Playing with that GIS data is really, really fun. But looking only at the live-in utilization, you have to make some assumptions in playing with the data, absolutely, but the live-in utilization might have built in some assumptions that aren't going to hold over the long term. And then I want to run through 6 principles that we think are important. We wanted not to get into the weeds of particular decisions, but to rather focus on the values that we think are really important, and then let people play with the data to see how they can meet those values. So first, which is the goal that the board and the administration share, creating elementary utilization rates that don't exceed 100%. This has to happen, right? Second is balancing the deep disparity between the high schools. Third is desegregating Myers-Wilkins. This could be an opportunity for a historic moment in desegregating a school, which you all could have your names on. Desegregating a school. This is a tough thing to do, but it could be really important. 4 is having the immersion programs each feed a single middle school and high school so that the immersion program can, as promised, continue into the later grades. I don't see any way that this district can support 2 immersion programs at 2 different middle schools and high schools. 5 is maintaining the Misabakang Ojibwe program at a geographically central school so that it maintains access for Indigenous community students and families. And 6 is consider offering Spanish immersion at 2 sites. The district has allowed Spanish to grow larger than it was supposed to, and that's pushing out the English at Lowell, but potentially adding a separate immersion school could address that problem. Thank you all very much for your service. Thanks, Nora. We'll miss you on the board here. And happy holidays. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. Is there any other comments? Do you want to check? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is reading communications, and there were none. And then the next item is the report of the superintendent. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Gronsett.
Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. I'm sure I don't have to remind the students that there are only 3 days until winter break. You were aware? All right. So there won't be school from December 3rd through January 1st. We'll be back in session on January 2nd of 2020. First time I think I said that. 2020. I have a few thank yous to share tonight, and I think you'll see a theme of people that have been talking about that this has been a record snowfall so far this year. Our facilities crews have gone above and beyond. They have been snow blowing and using our front end loaders and shoveling and salting a lot. More than usual. And so we appreciate all of their efforts in keeping our sidewalks clear and our driveways clear and trying to keep the ice off of our walkways as well. And we've been reminding everyone to walk like a penguin and avoid those slips and falls. I'd also like to thank, as others have, the many people that are involved with the special programs at all of our schools over the past few weeks. Elementaries, middle schools, high schools. There's been orchestra concerts and band concerts and choir concerts and all kinds of special events. And our music teachers and art teachers and facilities crews set it all up and take it all down and clean up. And then there's staff that are helping people into the schools and volunteer parents who are doing all kinds of supporting surrounding events around these events. And we just appreciate all of their efforts and the community for attending. All of the programs are a great way for our communities to come together to celebrate our students. And I try to attend as many as I can, and it never ceases to amaze me that it's just packed with people every single time, and they're just wonderful. So if you have a chance, there are still several to go this week, and so you have some opportunities to go out and see our talented students and the work of staff and families. Regarding the boundary study, thank you to those who continue to provide feedback on the scenarios and the process. We are sharing what's been provided with Cooperative Strategies, the company that's leading this process for us. And next month, we'll continue that process with more opportunities to provide input through public meetings and online surveys. We will continue to add information to the website as the process continues, and know that we value your input, and we're looking to hear from as many people as possible. We really want the outcome to be the best for our whole community. A while back, I was visiting a school, and I overheard a student say to another student, "Merry Christmas." And the response was, "Thanks, and Happy Hanukkah." "Oh yeah, thanks," is the response that he got. And it wasn't an uncomfortable exchange. It was sincere. And it was an exchange that demonstrated the understanding and acceptance of each other. And it was a recognition that their cultures and their beliefs and their traditions were different, and they were honoring each other by respectfully sharing their own greetings. And it was just really natural and a beautiful moment between our students. And I really encourage everyone to approach the season with the same spirit. This time of year means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So whatever it means to you and your family, I hope that it's filled with joy and it's exactly what you're hoping for, and that we can all appreciate and recognize how others choose to celebrate this season. So just a little story time from Superintendent Gronseth there, but I have lots of opportunities to learn from our students every day, and I appreciate them. And before we have our students share their final reports as representatives to the school board, I'd like to thank them for a wonderful year. We've enjoyed your reports. We appreciate your input and your feedback over the last year, and we have a small token of appreciation for you as well. And I think Member Chair Loeffler-Kemp is grabbing those. I fixed it though, so it's... So, in the bag is a shirt with the official district logo, and they received a framed certificate thanking them for their service to the school board. So, thank you very much. And Emma started last month, so we'll start with Vanessa Farrell from East High School.
I think I speak for the entire school when I say the highlight of the month was definitely the week-long Thanksgiving break due to the snowstorm. We were very thankful. And with that combined with winter break coming up, the agenda is pretty short. So this week is Winter Week, which includes an assembly that gets all the students involved and fun activities like a skating party after school, and then we do dress-up days. There's a boys basketball game tonight, and they're undefeated right now, so that's pretty exciting. It's going on right now. On Friday is the holiday concert, where all music students perform at the deck. It's a really pretty concert, and I encourage you all to go if you're able to find tickets. I know it gets pretty full. Currently, our executive board is putting on a backpack drive for school supplies for students in need, and we just finished an Animal Allies drive, and we got over 200 items for animals there, so that's really cute. And the end of the semester is right when we get back from break, and there will be a new student representative next meeting.
Thank you, Vanessa. And then Emma?
All right, I agree with Vanessa. The snow days have definitely been the highlight of the month. But we've been still pretty busy. So we had our holiday concert on Monday, which featured the Denfeld Band, Orchestra, and Choir, which was very successful. There was over 100 people there. The whole auditorium was packed. Our student government is hosting an Adopt a Family, so we're taking in clothes and toys donated from the school to give to a family from our school, an anonymous family, so that they have gifts to give for Christmas or whatever holiday they celebrate to their kids. And then we also held a separate toy drive where we're raising even more toys to give to families in need for Christmas time. Our Key Club has also held Coin Wars, which is a school-wide competition to get as many coins as you can donated, and they'll go to a local nonprofit of their choice. Link Crew, which is our upperclassmen guide for freshmen, is holding academic follow-ups. So they go to freshman English classes, and they visit every English class that a freshman takes, and they teach them a lesson about how to be successful in high school and how to enjoy high school and kind of create more connections with upperclassmen and lowerclassmen. And they are also having a holiday movie night tomorrow for all the freshmen. This week is also our Spirit Week, so we have tons of fun days, and we have a PEP assembly Friday. That'll be our last class of the day, so we don't even have to go to class the last day. We can just go to a PEP assembly and then go to break, and that's to spread holiday spirit and cheer. And that's pretty much it, but I would also like to mention that I'm really thankful for being on the board, and I've learned a lot, and I'll definitely use these skills for the rest of my life, so thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for your time, and we will be introducing the coming year's representatives soon. I know that East has been identified, and Denfeld is just wrapping up their process, so we will hear soon. And snow days are not the highlight of my month. I'm just going to say it actually is a very difficult decision to make. It's balancing student safety along with the desire to have our students in school as much as possible. So those are difficult decisions, and I will say that the student-created tweets and memes and Facebook posts are often funny when appropriate, and even though I don't respond except for when they asked if I read them and if I thought they were funny, I said, yes, I do, and only sometimes. So hopefully this weather doesn't continue into the rest of the winter with this number of snow days this early in the year. We will very likely be looking at adding time back because the number of snow days may grow. So those are conversations that we're starting. So don't wish for too many. All right. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Superintendent Grunset, for addressing snow days. And I know I heard a lot of good feedback from families and caregivers about some of the decisions to call it a little early so they could do planning. So thank you on that front. I have to admit, as someone with a teenage daughter, I know she probably tweeted or at least was sending me emails at wee hours of the morning to find out about closings, but I hope she was appropriate for you. But absolutely. Yeah, okay. And then I just want to say again a thank you to the student reps, and we look forward to seeing where your experience on the school board carries you in other leadership roles in whatever you endeavor next year and beyond. So have a great rest of the year. We also want to remind you, and we'll want to make sure you know about the School Board Association scholarship. There's a deadline in the middle of the winter. Usually it's February 15th. We'll get it to you. Only students around the state, and it's really a limited number because not all school boards have student reps get to apply. And we have had some winners from our school district over the years. So we'll make sure you get that. And thank you again, and look forward to meeting your new reps. I know, again, my daughter was very excited about the person who was chosen at East, so I'm sure there's excitement happening at Denfeld as well. So thank you. And let's see. Another note for students. Oh, the one other thing I just wanted to kind of piggyback on. I actually just came from a holiday party with our former assistant superintendent and about 20 exchange students that go to Denfeld and East and some of the other high schools. And it was really great fun to talk with them and hear a little bit about their experiences at our schools at Denfeld and East and the welcoming they have felt at both schools. So thank you for whatever role you maybe have played in that and the student bodies at both schools. So thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda then is a schedule of meetings and events, and our next meeting, official meeting, is January 6th, 2020, and that'll be at 4:30. That'll be our organizational meeting and swearing in of our new board member. And then you'll be hearing again more about the meetings January 22nd and 23rd, the boundary study community meetings on that, but I'll just throw it out there so people get it on their calendar. So the next item then is our report of our standing committees, and we'll start with our education committee, Member Lofold, and your team.
As they're coming up to the table, too, I just want to share that YouTube visitations on our education committee was up to almost 40 this week. So thank you for viewing the education committee meeting that was held last Monday, December 9th. And just encourage, it was maybe a little less than 2 hours, so maybe about an hour and a half. And if you can't attend an education meeting, you can always catch it on YouTube. But my invitation is always open and welcoming to have you sit in and observe our education committee meeting. We always learn a lot and ask good questions and have a good dialogue at education meetings. So thanks a lot. And so our education committee meeting was held on December 9th, last Monday. Starts at 4:15. And we always start out with informational items. And so first up always is, or not always, but the way we've run it, is Assistant Superintendent Jeff Horton. I'd just like to highlight a little bit of what we shared at the education committee meeting, because I think that even though it's just bullet points on our board book, there's just a wealth of information. And because of our structure this month of 3 board members present, the rest of the board just needs to kind of hear that we had some really good conversations on these items. So Assistant Superintendent Jeff Horton started out by kind of revisiting safe and welcoming schools and the fact that ALICE training is still going on. It's extending into other units of our staff, and we had some good conversation about what that looked like. He also commented about the diversion committee meeting update from the Department of our Human Rights. One of the things that we really, had good conversation, or just really was interesting to hear, is that Assistant Superintendent spends a lot of time at quality leadership team meetings. We heard from Ethan Fisher tonight as well. That's our labor management group. And they talk about snow days. They talked a little bit about technology and about our AEO school. And just, we as board need to know all that stuff, that's background that's going on, that, we're out doing our other jobs, the jobs that we have. And then, we need to know that our leadership and our administration is also doing a lot of meeting and talking about issues in our district. There were some additional highlights that Assistant Superintendent went over. He talked a little bit about a training that he and some members of our staff went to. They had a grant for $20,000 through MDE to attend the role of implicit bias as a barrier to reaching all children. And it was really specific, I believe, Assistant Superintendent, to preschool, early childhood. And so just good for us to know our community is really interested in what our staff is training, where we're going with that. So for us to hear about that is important work and an important message. If you don't always think that the education committee is where all the action happens, I'm going to tell you it's where we find out as a board and where our community should listen to of what's going on in our buildings with our teachers and our students and what they're doing. So I always enjoy that. In fact, Assistant Superintendent talked a little bit about a meeting they went to at the Hermantown Police Station. It was hosted by the Hermantown City Police on the topic of sextortation. And again, just kind of choke on that word a little bit because I'm older and you don't always say that word aloud. But just really eye-opening. He didn't go into great depth on that meeting, but it was clear that we are hitting important issues that our students and our staff need to pay attention to, and I like that our leadership is finding out more about it. We also heard from him about our professional training and support of our paraprofessionals and our staff, and finding a way to better support paraprofessionals. And I think that that's an area of our staff as well that we want to know as board. We are getting that they're getting good information. So we have launched something called InfoTech, and it's 15 minutes of professional development. And I know it's not a lot. That's a month, 15 minutes a month. But we're trying to find ways of allowing our paraprofessionals to find some professional development online, being dismissed maybe from a time in their classroom where they can get this 15 minutes of professional development to find a way to better support our paraprofessionals. He also talked a little bit about a conversation with College of St. Scholastica and other higher education about diversifying our workforce, another big community push to find ways of hiring and getting more diversity in our staff. And so they're talking about, some of the things we've already got going on. Our Pathways to Teaching program especially was highlighted. And then he just updated us. We had a good conversation, too, about our gender-neutral bathrooms and the success that's going on at both our high schools and how that's moving into our middle schools as well. So that concluded Assistant Superintendent Horton's report for us this month. So we really appreciated that. And then our second, anything you want to add? I didn't ask you to add anything. We're good? Okay. So then we always then also get an incredible update from our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Gail Netland-Freud. And again, just some great things going on in that area where our teachers are given opportunities to break out of their classroom. In fact, I subbed for Spanish teachers as they were going to their curriculum meetings this month. And I also know that our math department our elementary math specialists curriculum had some time out of the classroom to talk and get on board. And so Gail shared with us just some background, too, that it was really valuable, and it was. And we heard about this because actually she missed our meeting about it, and I think you came back from it quickly. But a while back, our staff and Ms. Netland-Freud went to the Minnesota Indian Education Association conference, 3-day event, where they got time to talk and connect and brainstorm about ways to be successful and what curriculums needed to be given, and focused on aligned systems for improved outcomes. And so I like that outreach. I think that it's important for our community and our board to know that we are trying very much a focus on our district to improve graduation rates and to decrease achievement gaps and some of our marginalized community and students. And so it is pleasurable to know that we are investing time and money by going to the conferences. We also had an update on the English language arts standardized standards. There was a town hall, and that also happened on our last board meeting night. That's why Director of Curriculum Gail wasn't with us last month, because she was attending that. It's still in the draft stage, so we have a chance to input, and as a former English teacher, I've already visited and given my input to the draft 1, but we're looking at drafts 2 and 3 down the road. So English language arts curriculum, always interesting to know exactly that we're updating and our students are getting more current novels or writing strategies and improvement that way. Director Netland-Freud also talked about Minnesota Department of Education workshops for curriculum leaders and how they were, being supported, and also really excited about the new teacher mentoring. Not new, we've had this before. It's not a new. It's just but it says new on our report. New teacher mentoring program, and so we are, pairing up our veteran teachers with our new staff. Ms. Netland said that we have over 60 new staff in our district, and so it's good to know that they are getting some introductions to our district. They also are looking at a program called QPR, which is the Intervention for Suicide and Emotional Distress, and some support for elementary math. Something to note for all of us that especially have middle school and high school students is that the course catalogs are being rolled out now. Yeah, I think? Right after break. So there are, registration for middle school and high school students are about to happen, so the course catalogs are being printed and put out in our district's schools. It's going to be important for parents to tap into that and know what the students are interested in. I thought it was really interesting that Gail highlighted that we have 2 new classes, advanced guitar, and that follows because we had guitar being offered as an elective for the first time this year. And so there's so much interest that we are changing the title of guitar to just Introduction to Guitar, and then we have an advanced guitar class being offered at the high school level, right? High school, yeah. And then the other new class being offered in our high schools, which I think is really exciting, is the Unified Phi-Ed. And I had never heard of it before, although once I really heard it, then I had heard about it. But it is an elective that high school students can take, and it's specifically geared towards helping and being an offering for our students with special needs, and also then being mentored by our mainstream students. So it's an elective in Phi-Ed that also has curriculum that's free already, so yay. And also it's kind of a gateway or a pathway to our Special Olympics programming. So what an exciting offering that I hope our students take advantage of, and I know that our teachers in our high schools and our FIAD teachers are really excited about it, and I'm sure they'll be pushing it for students to sign up. So we appreciate the updates on our course catalogs. And then up for next month from our Director of Curriculum is immersion. They're planning a retreat. And the MSBA conference presentation, we're presenting on our immersion success at the January Minnesota School Board Association. Congratulations. Thank you. And that would conclude then our curriculum and director's report. Moving right along for the Education Committee, we have grants that were applied for. So this is just informational for you. So it's recommended that as a board we accept these 8 grant recommendations. I think that the word is getting out that 1, we need to submit our grants if we're going to ask for them, and 2, I think our staff is outstanding. I listen to a lot of school board meetings on YouTube. Yeah, you know that. I've said it before. And I don't think I have never, well, it's in their consent agenda, so maybe I don't see it. I have never seen so many grant applications as what we've got in our district. So our teachers are working hard. We've got 8 of them. We've got Donald Simons. He is our engineer and industrial arts teacher for $37,000 to purchase and install machinery. So those of us, it's also, you have to understand that we do have, it used to be called, what did it be called, like woodworking and industrial ed or shop class. And we do have it, it just has different names, and they do a ton of different things. But we do have skilled classes that our teachers get grants for. We also have John Rudolph from East who teaches biology. He's got a $1,000 grant for a pollinator garden. We have Jennifer Fuchs from Lincoln Park, who's asking for money for restorative practice toolkits. We've got 2 from Jill Lofald, who's a Denfeld speech and debate coach, to ask to ask the Rotary Club for support for expenses that students at Denfeld sometimes find a challenge, like our uniforms, which are suits, and with travel expenses because we go on a 2-day tournament a few times. I also asked the Patchell Foundation for $3,500 because they support our national tournaments. The speech and debate team has appeared at Harvard. We've appeared at Albuquerque, New Mexico this year, and we also have a tournament in May that we hope to qualify. That's in Houston, Texas. So that Patchell grant, along with some rummage sales I'll do, will help us. We have a grant from Leah McNeil from Denfeld, a culinary arts teacher that we've met a number of times here, for $400 for chafing dishes because she's out providing all kinds of opportunity for her students to serve in our district of different outreach for food, I guess. We have our 7th grant is from Jamie Bennett from ALC, $1,000 for integration. She's the integration specialist, and this is to cover expenses for ALC. And our last grant ask is from Amy Samuel from Lester Park for $800 for a reading program within our autistic program. So some great grants to approve tonight. And so keep moving along, Jill. It is now our action items. We have the school calendar. Is there any questions about the 2021 school calendar? And if there is, you can pull it at the end of my report. But we do have our calendar, of which a lot of parents and families really do like. And we like that it's out this early so that everything can be planned for next year's start of school. Hard to believe that in January we're talking about the next fall school year, but thank you for that vision. We have 2 resolutions to look at tonight, or for me to read. If I can just, dig through my list of things. I know I've got them. There's 2 of them. Yeah, you're looking at all this, all this preparation I do. So our first resolution is, it doesn't have a number. Yeah, it's at the bottom. Oh, it's at the bottom. Okay, Resolution E-12-19-3691. It's a designation of identified official with authority for the Minnesota Department of Education External User Access Recertification System. Do I have to read it? Whereas the Minnesota Department of Education requires that school districts annually designate an identified official with authority to comply with State Access Control Security Standard 1.0, which states that all user access rights to Minnesota state systems must be reviewed and recertified at least annually. So the identified official with authority will assign job duties and authorize external users access to the Minnesota Department of Education's secure systems for their local educational agency. Now therefore be it resolved, the superintendent recommends the board authorize Cheryl Williams to act as the identified official with authority for the Head Start organization Duluth Head Start 710-84. I move Resolution E-12-19-3691.
Thank you, Member Lofold. There has been a second by Member Sandsted of Resolution E-12-19-3691. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Resolution E-12-19-3691. You can move on to the next one.
I have a second resolution. It's E-12-19-3693. This is one we always get at the Education Committee. It's the acceptance of grant awards to the Duluth Public Schools. Whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires a school district to accept grants by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full. And whereas acceptance of the grant in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described grant from said organization in accordance with the terms set forth within. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to these organizations. We have 3 grants. We have one from the Minnesota Agriculture in the Classroom for Leah McNeil for the $400, and it is funds to be used for the chafing dishes for the Clock Tower Catering Project. We have a $10,000 grant. This is really unique to Denfeld High School. It's the class of 55 Steve Anderson Greater Denfeld Foundation Fund. It's given to a variety of teachers to be used in classroom projects and expenses, also for extracurricular programs in the amount of $10,000. Usually, I think there's probably like 20 awards being given at $500 to $1,000. So when it says various, it's because there's so many given that to list them all probably would take me even more time. And so the funds will be used to support various projects and initiatives at Denfeld High School. And our last one is from Amy Samuel, from the Autism Association for $800 for Lester Park. I move Resolution E-12-19-3693.
Second.
Resolution E-12-19-3693 has been moved by Member Lofold, seconded by Member Trinka. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. You can continue, Member Lofold.
There's just a few, there's 2 more things, right? There is our diploma requests. So we have 4 Duluth Public School graduates that have completed their graduation requirements and deserve our congratulations. So we want to congratulate Alyssa Broden, Drew Dre Hamala, Jordan Rodzidlo, and Jonah Michael David Plies. Alyssa, Dre, Jordan, and Jonah all graduated with our diplomas from the Duluth Public Schools, and we want to congratulate them. Congratulations. And then our final is just we have to approve a trip request. It is for an extended trip for the Wilderness Elite Junior Rotarian Winter Camping Trip. And so how fun is that? I don't know, with so much snow, I don't know if I'd be camping in the winter, but so that completes our education committee. But I want to just call attention to my board for our future items, because I think we've had conversation about like agenda setting items and open meeting and all of that stuff. And I want to highlight too that, you know, in a way, it's not completely, but in a way, our future items, which appear on our business committee, they're kind of our agenda. So our future agenda items in a public setting is policy updates. And I've really worked with Assistant Superintendent Jeff Horton to see what kind of policies, especially in our education area, we can do. We know that our future next month or February, our immersion transition will be a part of our agenda. And also, we're going to hear from companies to classrooms, which is an exciting opportunity and for our staff. So those are our future items. This completes the Education Committee report.
Okay, thank you, Member Lofold. So it's been moved by Member Lofold. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Member Eder. And is there any discussion or any items you might want pulled? Okay. Okay. I'm just going to make one comment then under the action item A, the calendar, and I thank you for your great report on that. I just wanted for the public to know that every December we do review the calendar. That's one of those standard things that will come in front of us every year. And as Member Lofold touched on, as well as Ethan Fisher touched on, the calendar is reviewed by many committees, including the Quality Steering Committee, which is made up of teachers and principals. So it goes through a lot of steps before it gets here to us. But that happens every December. So next year, it'll be here again. So if there isn't any other discussion on any other items, then we have a motion to move the education agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the Education Committee carries 7-0. And now we'll move on to our next standing committee, which is HR. And thank you again, Member Lofold and team. Okay.
I have access. Thank you. Well, I think the HR committee meeting lasted less than 15 minutes.
And I was late. I got a challenge.
There's the challenge. It's not to say we didn't do important things. The staffing report took very little time. We did discuss new policy 426, the first reading, our nepotism policy, after many months waiting for it. It is on the board book and is essentially an MSBA policy that was made for charter schools, which has been revised. Let me just bring it up here. It's fairly straightforward, and I think identifies the close family members and relationships that are most important and what direct or indirect supervision means. And these were the two things that we had discussed before. So this is the first reading, and it will be discussed again next month and voted on, so anyone who has comments on it can get to me or the committee. The Superintendent Search was on the agenda, but it was an update. The meeting was to be held the next day, and it was held, in fact, yesterday. Now, that meeting was scheduled for 90 minutes and lasted about 4 hours. I was a long one. 3 hours. Yeah. More than 2. And I'll just briefly mention what went on there, and I think that that meeting is on YouTube as well. The two consultants from BWP were here and met with us, and we decided, I don't know if we elected, we decided that members Lofold and Oswald are going to be our liaisons with BWP. We talked about where the position of the superintendent, where the position would be advertised, how the survey, community survey, would be conducted. decisions on how to involve in a most meaningful way the stakeholders that we know are important was discussed, and a timeline was discussed as well. And I think, as I can find that here, the things that were decided on for sure is that January 2nd and 3rd, each of the individual school board members will be interviewed long distance by the consultants. And focus groups in the community will start happening January 27th and 28th. And we discussed how to invite members of the community, which members to invite and how to invite them of the many, many, many stakeholders that there are. And that has not been decided for sure yet. So that was a 3-hour meeting. And that is the HR report. I move that it be accepted.
Okay, thank you, Member Kirby. So Member Kirby has moved the HR report. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Member Trinka. And then is there any discussion or items people want pulled? And I'm seeing a couple lights on. Member Sandstead, just 1 minute, please.
I would like to pull item 2A.
Did you want to pull an item?
I just want to make a comment to my board members that there's a Google Doc that I shared earlier today that just asks for your response to those individual interviews with BWP associates. So just a reminder, I said the deadline was Friday, but it can be earlier too, and then the earlier you will know what hours worked for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Lofold. I did fill mine out at about 4:04, and it only took like 2 minutes, so thank you. So the only other item then is the 2A, the nepotism. So Member Sandstead, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to express, this is the first reading, but I won't be around for the second. I support it. I appreciate the work on this, Mr. Swirsky, and we had a number of discussions throughout the last 10 months or so on this, and I think it's a good product, so thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, Tim.
I just want to acknowledge that it's one of our team members, Amy McCarthy, who worked on that policy for us, and give her some credit for that.
Okay, thank you. And again, welcome again, Amy. Wanted to highlight too with that policy, again, it's a model policy from the Minnesota School Board Association, and we do generally get a lot of model policies from them that we can then tailor for our district. But that's a good starting point, and often it's been reviewed well with a number of different policies by the School Board Association. So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any other further discussion? Okay, then all in favor of accepting the Human Resource Committee, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. And now we'll move on to the Business Committee. And thank you again, HR staff. And Member Trinka, you are on in just 1 minute. Okay.
Thank you. So this is a report for the Business Committee that was held last Tuesday, and it is a pretty exciting meeting for those of us who love numbers and contracts. I feel really grateful to have had the opportunity to chair the Business Committee for a second year, and I get very excited about this stuff, maybe not as excited as CFO Erickson, but maybe a pretty close second, I would guess. So we started off our meeting with a report from our auditors, Whitfleet. So I want to begin by thanking CFO Erickson, Peggy, and the finance team. There is so much work that goes into an audit, even though we work with an outside firm. So thanks to you, the two of you and your teams, for all the work that you put into this. And I think CFO Erickson prepared a really lovely 2-page document. So for those who are looking at the documents online, please take a look at that because it's a really good breakdown of the multiple page report that we received from our auditors. Overall, what they discovered or didn't discover was that there were no internal control findings or compliance or internal compliance over financial reporting or federal programming. So they do have, the auditors have to check 20% of our expenditures, and this year they tested Head Start funding and we had no compliance or control issues, and all of our programs across the board are considered low risk. So that's really great. That's a really great clean bill of health from our auditors, which is really fantastic. CFO Erickson helped answer a lot of the questions that those of us who were able to participate in the meeting had. Kathy, do you have anything that you want to add about the report in general? I think one of the pieces that was really interesting for me was taking a look at the audit for the debt service fund, which is something that we hear a lot about as school board members, and ask questions of our representative from Whitfleet, who has experience obviously auditing other school districts. And so she talked a lot about how we're really in line with other districts that are comparable in size and scope for our debt service fund, and the fact that we don't have, that we're considered low risk with our debt service fund is fantastic and a strong testament to our outstanding finance team. So you will hear thanks over and over again tonight, and so I don't know, you can keep a tally. But I would encourage people to take a look at that 2-page document if you're interested in reading audit reports. We also talked about financials, and we had a good conversation about adjustments to pupil counts. We're seeing a very steady pupil count, APU pupil count numbers, and so that may or may not result in some budget modifications in January. I appreciate the consideration that the finance team is taking as you approach whether or not to adjust the numbers based on APUs, or, you know, if we use some of those resources to help grow our fund balance or whatever that looks like. So I appreciate your consideration and how you take into account not only the needs of the district, but also the expressed desires of the board. So we look forward to having a new look at that in 2020. We talked about fundraisers, and then talked about, did some education around truth in taxation. Even if you don't love business or finance, if you can tune in to the 20 minutes or so that CFO Erickson spends every month doing a chunk of time for education, it is hugely beneficial to understand not only both the complexity and the simplicity of school financing. And as tax-paying citizens, I think it's important to understand that we are being very good stewards of your tax dollars, and Kathy does a really good job helping us break down those really large budget numbers and understanding the different components of that. So that was really great. Next, we discussed policies and regulations. One of the policies that we discussed and we'll be voting on tonight is fundraising by students. I appreciate all of the effort that was put into that from student groups and from teachers, as well as from administrative staff, to really finesse this fundraising policy. And that will replace, that's policy 511, that will replace policy 1050. And then we discussed the looking at, and we'll be voting on tonight, revising a bylaw to change the order of our school board meetings to support, to begin with utilizing consent agendas. It's very common for boards who have large agendas to do consent agendas. My enthusiasm was overflowing, and I was hoping we would start in January. Kathy was much more measured. But regardless, we will be doing board education as well as community education to help better understand how to most effectively use a consent agenda should that pass tonight. And then we moved on to contracts, change orders, and leases. Listed on the business committee are the Essential Health Sports Medicine Services and Essential Health Sponsorship Agreement. Those were not discussed at the business committee meeting, although they are in this report, because we did not have the updated language from we didn't have the updated language last Tuesday, but they were included in our packet, hopefully for folks to review. We also discussed a number of change orders that, including for PSS track replacement for that darn lane 1, and anybody who's running lane 1 knows you don't need a dip right around that corner, so thank you to Mr. Spooner for your work on that. And then also just some overall access control improvements district-wide, which ties to our grant that's around school safety. So big thanks to Mr. Spooner for helping us understand how those break down. So with that, then we moved on to resolutions. So I'm going to read Resolution B-12-19-3694, acceptance of donations. Whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires a school district to accept donations by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full, and whereas acceptance of the donations in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools, now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described donations from said organizations in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to these various individuals and organizations. So with that, and with my express gratitude, I move Resolution B-12-19-3694.
Thank you, Member Trinka. So the resolution has been moved by Member Trinka, seconded by Member Lofold. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor of Resolution B-12-19-3695, please say aye. Aye. Any
It's
opposed?
9-4.
Yeah,
I'm on board, Brooke. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, my apologies.
Yep, it is. Okay. B-12-19-3694. Okay, we got two different notes here. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 7-0, and then go on to the next resolution, please, Member Trinka.
Yep, will do. And this one has two numbers on it as well. A different one in the committee report, and then is on the actual resolution. So we just need to reconcile this. But this is an exciting one that we talked about earlier. It's the resolution for the Certified Tax Levy 2019 payable 2020. And I just want to remind folks what CFO Erickson expressed earlier. This is exactly the same as what we passed in September. So there is no change. So I move Resolution B-12-19-3695 or 4? 95. 95. Okay, thank you on the official. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, to hereby set the tax levy for 2019 payable 2020 at $40,089,645.79. I move Resolution B-12-19-3695.
Thank you, Member Trinka. So the resolution has been moved by Member Trinka, seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any more discussion? Okay, so just to confirm, Jackie, Resolution B-12-19-3695 has been moved and seconded, and did we vote on it? All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 7-0. You can go on.
Thank you. Moving on to informational items. We talked through some expenditure contracts, some no-cost contracts, revenue contracts. For those of us who have contracts, it was a real party. We talked about property sale updates, and so I appreciate the more fleshed out update that we received from the real estate.
Fulmer.
Yep, Greg Fulmer. I know that, but real estate agent. That's the word I was looking for. And we are looking for some additional analytics from them on how many hits our posts are getting, and so hopefully we'll be able to see that. We then discussed the facilities management and capital project status report, which is one of my most favorite reports. And I want to begin by giving echoing what we've heard earlier, a big thank you to our facilities and maintenance teams across the district for all of your hard work during this, our 9th largest snowfall in Duluth history. While it has led our 10-year-old to believe that he can lobby me for snow days, I'm very clear that I am not able to be bought. So really a sincere thank you to your teams, Mr. Spooner, across the district. I know that these have been very difficult days and really long hours, so we really, really thank you all. And then we also had a first look at our legislative platform, which includes a number of similar items that we had on our platform last year and a couple of new ones. As we saw during the Truth in Taxation report, 60% of our funding comes from our state legislators. So this legislative platform is incredibly important, and I want to thank all of the administrative staff and the staff across the district who have worked on this. You guys were down at the Capitol last week working on this already, so a big thanks, and we'll be talking about that again as we look to finalize it. Moving forward, next month we'll be discussing our organizational meetings, our school board committee structures, and then additional policy updates. I want to again thank everyone. It's a pleasure to serve as your business committee chair for a second year. I love this stuff, and with that, I move the business committee meeting.
Okay, the business committee has been moved by Member Trinka, seconded by Member Oswald. Is there any items people want to discuss or pull?
Yes.
Okay, so I have Member Sandstead and Member Trinka. Member Sandstead.
Item 4C.
Member Trinka?
Let's see. Item 5, let's see. 5A2.
Okay. And anybody else? Any items you want to discuss or pull at this point? You can decide after, but we'll start then with Member Sandstead and Member 4C.
I wanted to just put out a couple of thought questions on this bylaw change, and I think it's not questions with how it's drafted, it's just how it's going to be implemented, and I think that's going to be a work in progress. When we were reading through the Education Committee and all the grants, I wondered if that kind of material from the standing committees might end up on consent agenda eventually, and I would encourage that. I think it makes a lot of sense for efficiency. I also wanted to note that we have the reading and communications we're putting onto the consent agenda, and one thing that I noticed when I first started 4 years ago was that the board members get emails to all board members from time to time, at least one a month, I would say. And those aren't considered reading communications by whoever makes that call. And I think that as a board, we should make the decision that anything that comes to the board, whether it comes in hard letter or email, is a communication to the board, and it should be included, especially since we're doing this electronically and the consent agenda doesn't need to be printed out. I think just for transparency, when somebody writes to the school board, that is a communication and it should be reflected as part of this process. And then while I have the mic, I would also encourage you all to change the rules about microphone control so that all board members who are grown adults are able to turn on and off their microphones as needed. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Member Sandstead. I wanted to just comment, thank you to Ms. Erickson for providing us with this sample order of the consent agenda and some kind of thoughts on a structure that may make sense for us, and I look forward to, again, further discussion on it. But thank you for doing the homework on that, and you'd like to make a comment. Thank you, Ms. Erickson.
And just to follow up, I think what we'd like to have is a regulation with this as a complement to show the outline of the items that would be such as the grants and other things, which we did discuss at November's business committee. So I think point well taken, and our hope is that we would have that regulation to follow up this change once, if the board approves this. Thank you.
Superintendent Grunstead?
Just a note on the communications piece. The communications that are on here are things that are spindled. So it would also apply to the emails. If they were going to be included, they would be spindled, which means there's a copy of it, a hard copy, kept in the superintendent's office.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, Member Trinka, you had 5A.
I have a comment with this.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I want to echo what Member Sandsted said as well. CFO Erickson, you beat me to the punch on a lot of those. I struggle with this being a bylaw because it's really rigid then. I would like us to keep this on the business committee meeting until we have this finessed. So that, I mean, I would like to see us pass it, but I would like us to revisit it as we get comfortable with the consent agenda, because it is a different process, and we want to be really careful that we're not hiding important information in the consent agenda or give the appearance that we are. But I also want, because it's a bylaw, it's more rigid, I want the ability to flex this and play with it a little bit, so that what we're sharing up here and discussing up here is really valuable and useful for the public as well as for us, because I know we all learn a lot from each other. Because if we're just putting minutes and communications on the consent agenda, that's going to take 3 minutes off of our meetings. And so it really is us understanding how we want to utilize this time and this platform, literally and figuratively, as school board members. So I would just encourage us to continue revisiting this on a regular basis since we have to, because it's a bylaw change.
Thank you, Member Trinka. And I think, I can't remember now if it was at our November meeting when this was first presented, but one of the things that Ms. Erickson really highlighted is at any point things can be pulled from the agenda, and that's, I think, just important for the public to know as well. That we're not working to hide anything, we're working to be more efficient, but at any point we as board members can have things pulled and continue further discussion as we do now. So thank you. Member Trinka, 5A.
Yeah. So for those who are in board book, I'm starting on page 150, if that's helpful. And I'm going to ask questions more than anything, because we didn't get to discuss this last Tuesday. And some of this we discussed in November, but I just want to make sure that I'm fully understanding this sponsorship agreement between the Duluth Public Schools and St. Mary's DBA Essentia Health East. So, my first question, CFO Erickson, is since we're entering into the agreement per this language as of August 15th, 2019, how does that work? Because we're looking back a number of months, and what are there implications with finances or with any of those pieces because we're looking back that far? I'll just ask you one question at a time if that's okay. So if you could leave my microphone on. Thank you.
So the August 15th, 2019 date is just the subsequent date after the retirement of our other agreement, and then you can see that basically at the end of this agreement, it just says this agreement will supersede. We're actually working off of an expired contract right now. Essentia Health is providing services to us even though we don't have an active contract at the moment. So I think this was just more just to provide clarity of when the old contract had expired and the new one has come in. Specifically in this contract, this is a new agreement because of the sponsorship and the contribution being new, and we could certainly amend that date because although this is tied to the sports medicine agreement that they run in tandem. If you read part of the contract language, if one ceases, that ties it to the other one being able to be ended as well. So the language, I think, just again is representation of when the agreement is, but if you felt more comfortable changing that date, we certainly could. But I think when we worked with Nsba, it made sense as just to the continuation of the new agreement.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Erickson, and Member Trinka.
Thank you. That's really helpful clarification, and I think that you shared that with us before. But one of the other pieces that maybe you can help clean up, because I know you put so much energy into this, is I'm struggling a little bit with reconciling. So under the agreement section number 2, recognition, it says Duluth Public Schools agrees not to offer, grant, or sell the right to name any portion or subordinate portion of a DPS facility, including but not limited to blah, 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 to anyone whose primary business falls within the category of providing healthcare services or who would otherwise be reasonably identified by Essentia or the public to be a direct competitor. So that's in that section. And then if you go further down, it talks about that Essentia would have to agree to any lower tier sponsors. And so lower tier if they're competitors of Essentia. So that language seems in conflict.
Go ahead, members. Ms. Erickson.
Thank you. So under the agreement number 2, recognition, this is in direct relationship to a potential naming rights policy that we may create. They were following and aware that we had an initial discussion about naming rights for our buildings, which may include a contribution by that person that might be recognized, which we haven't yet done. But in preparation of this being a 5-year agreement, they just wanted it to be agreed to that because they are, in a sense, providing this contribution, and that the recognition here would be relatable to that. When we talk in the other sections of the agreement about the lower tiered sponsorship, going back up into the recitals in Part B when they talk about the athletic program. So what they're saying there is that we are able to accept contributions from other entities, and they may be recognized, but just at a lower level. So if other entities that might be in competition, we would not be recognizing them at the same level or same tier. So this in Part 2 recognition is specific to naming rights. So this would be a larger scale sponsorship or contribution should the district move forward with that sometime in the future. And then the other pieces are just in regular contributions, donations, or sponsorships that we might get throughout the year, which we do have and do receive. And just keeping that piece in mind, even though that's under this new agreement, that's in our current agreement that we have with Essentia Health, and we have been doing that for multiple years already, and have been working with them in how to make sure we recognize those adequately.
Thank you, Ms. Erickson. Member Trinka?
Thank you for that. One last question for you. So the first bullet under sponsorship contribution is about the $100,000 to purchase new weight room equipment at Denfeld and East. How is that money going to be divided down the line, or how are those allocated? But how are the decisions being made about the percentage of allocation between the two high schools?
Thank you for that question. It appears that we might have the first version instead of the last version, because we did ask and they did change that to $50,000 for each high school. That was specific in a version of the contract. That is what is agreed upon. So I will make sure that we edit that and get that changed if that was in the version. And keep in mind, we've been working on this for about 6 months. And we had been going back and forth with Essentia multiple times to make sure we had the right draft, and we did specifically make sure that that was spelled out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Erickson. And Member Sandstead, did you have your light on? Okay. Member Kirby?
Thank you. I just had talked with CFO Erickson about this before, but I just want to make it clear that the district retains the decision-making authority over the signage and what goes where.
That is correct. Member Kirby, we worked with Essentia. There wasn't anything specific in the contract that outlined who did, and because we had received some feedback from members of the district, they were agreeable to that. So it does say within the contract that our facilities director would be the person who would approve any signage in relation to the sponsorship agreement in any of our sites.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Erickson, and I do recall that discussion a couple meetings ago as well, so thank you. Is there any other discussions on this item 5A? Any other discussion on 5A? Okay, thank you for those questions. And then, is there any discussion on any other item in the business committee? Otherwise, it's been moved by Member Trinka. It's been seconded by Member Oswald. So, can all in favor please say aye? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the business committee passes 7-0. Thank you. And then the last items are, we do have a couple special resolutions that we have every year at this time of the year in terms of attendance at the school board conference, and I'll just do the motion on them and ask for a second. So the first one is Resolution SP 12-19-3696, board member attendance at the 2020 NSBA Leadership Conference. Resolved that Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, pay cost incurred as per district policy for school board members to attend the Minnesota School Board Association's 2020 Leadership Conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota on January 15th through the 17th, 2020. Is there a second to this resolution? Second. Okay, seconded by Member Lofold, and then is there further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries 7-0, and just again, thank you all for making the time and working with your work schedules and family schedules to attend this conference. We look forward to all attending together. And then the second resolution is Resolution SP 12-19-369. Oops, sorry. I have two copies of everything just in case. Resolution SP 12-19-3697. I move the resolution authorizing school board members' attendance at the Minnesota School Board Association Phase 1, 2, and 4 orientation workshops. Resolve that Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, pay cost incurred as per district policy for new school board members to attend the Minnesota School Boards Association Phase 1, 2, and 4 orientation workshops held in January 2020. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Member Trinka. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of Resolution SP 12-19-3697, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. And again, we're really excited to have our new school board members attending these required training workshops and having the opportunity to network with other board members around the state. That is our special resolutions. Is there any other questions or comments, board members? Okay, Member Trinka, and then, okay, Member Member Trinka, or Member Lofold.
I just want to kind of take this opportunity to kind of piggyback off of the consent agenda policy and look forward to more conversation and making sure that we've got everything organized. But I also want to, kind of have you look back at how our committee meetings went this month. It was a different structure for us, 3 of us there. I thought that allowed for, good conversation and just the ability for not all of us to have to be there. But I think that if we stay with that structure, I would really want to have an opportunity like an hour before board meetings like this that would be called like a work session where we could come in and we might then be able to have a conversation prior to our board meeting on the Essentia contract or on any grant or donation, or just an opportunity if we're going to stay with that 3-member structure, that we might consider adding a 40-minute or a half hour or an hour meeting prior to a school board meeting to have conversation. I don't know if that's a policy, I don't know if that's legal, but just an idea to think about. I see it a lot in the school boards that I have researched.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Member Lofold. Member Trinka?
Sure. So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes, and I'll piggyback on what Member Lofeld said. I think that that would be a great topic to discuss at a strategic planning retreat. Okay. So whomever our incoming board chair is, which we will vote on next month, I would like that to be at the very top of the agenda, as I'm sure our incoming superintendent would appreciate as well. I just wanted to give I really want to thank Superintendent Gronseth for what has been a great year, as well as leadership team, to our student representatives for your great work this year. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Member Sandstead. Steel sharpens steel, and I agree with what Mr. Martell said earlier. I think that while we're gaining a fantastic new school board member, and we're excited to have you join us next month, Paul, it will be a loss to not have you at the table anymore. So thank you very much for your 4 years of service, Member Sandstead.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn? Move.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Second.
Moved by Member Trinka, seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you all. Have a great winter break.